The SS Cyprus. This vessel would be a part of 5 identical steamers: the Adriatic, the Hemlock, the Odana, and the Calumet. All 5 of these steamers would be part of the high-demand steel bulk freighter era, and this would be in the early 1900s. The Cyprus's length was 420 feet. She had a width of 52 and a depth of 28. She would also have a gross tonnage of 4,900 tons. As you can probably guess, all 5 of these vessels would also come equipped with a triple expansion steam engine within them. The Cyprus would be built by the American Shipbuilding Company of Lorain, Ohio, and then she would be owned by the Lackawanna Steamship Company. This was a subsidiary of Pickens, Mather and Company, and they were based out of Fairport, Ohio. She would go on to be described as, and I quote, "seaworthy a vessel as has ever been turned out by a lake shipyard," end quote. This was said about the Cyprus from the Marine Review, which was a Cleveland trade publication that said this about her. The first voyage of the SS Cyprus would prove uneventful, if anything. She would be loaded down with iron ore for the lower lake ports. While there may not be much to describe the Cyprus as unique from her 5 sister ships, she would, however, go on to tragically and quickly be uniquely lost on Lake Superior in 1907, this being only after her second voyage. On October 9th, 1907, at around 9 a.m., the Cyprus would make her way out onto Lake Superior from Superior, Wisconsin. She would be loaded down tight with a cargo of iron ore, and she was making her way for Lackawanna, New York, and the steel mills which were down there. It's no secret in the fall storms that can occur out on the Great Lakes, and the SS Cyprus, as she made her way out into Lake Superior, would meet one head-on. However, initially there was no cause for alarm, as it was reported as nothing that the Cyprus couldn't have handled, and this account came from the second mate, Charles G. Pitts, who would end up being the sole survivor of the Cyprus disaster. As the Cyprus made her way out into Lake Superior, the storm would grow in intensity, and the wind and waves would batter her mercilessly about. It is said that the storm was so severe that they would make very little to no headway out on their first day. By October 11th, the Cyprus was near Deer Park, Michigan, on the south shore of Lake Superior. She simply had made very little headway on her journey. And then, around 7:45, the ship would begin to lurch to port. This being caused from the survivor's account that the ship had been so battered about by the waves that some of her hatch covers would be torn off, and this would allow the heavy seas to enter her hold and swamp the ship. Charles Pitts, along with 3 others, which also included the captain, Captain F.B. Huck, would secure themselves on a life raft. They would lower the life raft into the water and make their way for shore. By 2 a.m., the raft and her occupants, all 4 of them, were just within 300 feet of shore, when all of a sudden a rogue wave would flip the life raft. The men were thrown into the freezing waters of Lake Superior, and all but one would freeze and drown. Charles Pitts would miraculously make it to shore, though, after this entire ordeal, and he was just a half-mile east of the Deer Park life-saving station. He made it to shore, but he was barely alive and was freezing when he was found by the U.S. lifesavers of, again, the Deer Park life-saving station. Charles was cared for and fed at the life-saving station. Later, as Charles made his way home, he would eventually be confronted by the owners of the Cyprus, who wanted to know the horrific details of her sinking. During the horrific events that sank the Cyprus, there was also another steamer that would also see her. The vessel George Stephenson, which was out of Pittsburgh, had passed the Cyprus that afternoon, and it would go on to note that the Cyprus was trailing a red wake. This would happen from water getting into her cargo hold and mixing with the iron ore dust. There has been much speculation into what exactly sank the Cyprus. There were certain hatch covers aboard her called Mulholland sliding hatch covers, which she had been outfitted with. These hatch covers, however, were described as prone to allowing water to pass through them, unless specially strapped down with special tarpaulins. It was never made exactly clear if Captain Huck had ordered these tarpaulins deployed or not on the time of her departure. In all, after the disastrous event of the sinking of the SS Cyprus, all but one of the 23 crew members aboard her would tragically be lost. Eventually, all but 2 bodies were recovered from Lake Superior of the Cyprus. In August of 2007, members from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society were out on Lake Superior using side-scan sonar, and they were searching for wrecks off of Deer Park. As they were searching, they would detect a large object on the bottom of Lake Superior. The initial guess of the vessel on the bottom of Lake Superior was possibly that of the DM Clemson. However, after a follow-up visit to the vessel on the bottom, and with a submersible ROV, it was made clear on August 18, 2007, that this was the Cyprus. The Cyprus was discovered lying on her port side in about 460 feet of water. Also, her hull is completely intact, which was rather surprising for people considering the deadly storm and the manner in which she had sunk. The Cyprus's name is also legible, along with her port of call on her stern. And that is the full story of the SS Cyprus and her loss on Lake Superior. Man, what a story that was. And this poor ship and her crew just fighting for their lives out there in these terrible fall storms and gales that brew up so quickly, so rapidly. We've heard that many, many times in these stories and these other ships that have gone down in similar situations. But what an eerie sight that must have been. The other steamer, the George Stephenson, that had passed her that afternoon, that they said that she was trailing a red wake behind her. I mean, so she must have had a leak already prior to be trailing like that, and I wonder if the storm at that point had only just started getting bad, or the waves were just enough to get in within her cargo hold. I believe this was still before the hatch covers were torn off, which would really have caused damage to her, and probably even caused more of a red wake behind her from the iron ore dust. But yeah, what a scene that must have been. And I'm sure that George Stephenson herself had to fight in the storm, I wonder, as well, as she was out there too when they passed each other. But yeah, tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts and theories as to what may have caused her to list finally? Was it just they weren't able to pump out the water fast enough during this storm, and then she listed and finally capsized? Yeah, tell me what your guys' thoughts is as well about just only four crew members were able to scramble to a lifeboat and get it lowered into the lake in time as she was going down. My goodness. But yeah, if you guys have additional information, I'd love to hear it. I always enjoy your guys' thoughts, inputs, theories, everything. And this ship definitely deserved her telling on our channel. And there's unfortunately many more ships, much like her, who have tragic events, but we will get to them in due time. But with that being said, I thank you all so very much in joining me on this story and on this episode on Songs of the Great Lakes. Do check out the merch store, as always, in the description, and leave a comment or a like. And we got a lot of good stuff coming up here, especially next month. And do keep your eyes open for some more interviews that are in the works. But yeah, with that being said, as always, God bless you. Hope you're doing well. And until next time, I will see you again on Songs of the Great Lakes.